We're always here talking college football with you late night here at the Voice of College Football, but this time it is playoff week in college football. And of course, 4 big matchups to highlight on Friday and Saturday. Comments and questions are welcome. Of course, we will stick around late night for you if you so deem. So please keep those contributions coming. We appreciate your support here at the Voice of College Football to get us to a second hour. Matt Zemek, of course, right next to me. You can join him most notably at a Trojans Wire. But for as good as his work as a Trojans Wire, I actually prefer what he does at the USC channel as co-host, of course, as USC at the Voice of College Football, and as our chief editor at VOCFB.com. Matt, how you doing tonight?
Well, finally playoff week, and it was so weird to have a bowl game right after Army-Navy, and it's no wonder that the LA Bowl is going out of business. And it's just staggering that a bowl game was created, or a bowl game was held 6 days after the matchup was announced. Like, how the heck are they expecting anyone to attend that game? That was abysmal. And yet it's kind of a commentary on the state of the bowl system at this point.
All right. I guess at this point, only Ryan and myself know that this is take 2. So, Ryan, thank you so much for being flexible through my stupidity. But here we are for another take with Ryan. This is Ryan Winter, of course, from Sports Chat 503, folks. Check it out right here on YouTube. And, of course, Ryan loves the Ducks, covers the Ducks, and talks Oregon football with us on a regular basis here at the Voice of College Football, and is a great friend. And Ryan, we appreciate you being here.
Appreciate you, Mark. Again, whatever I can do for the Voice of College Football, you know that, buddy.
All right, we're going to give this another go, because what I said to Ryan a few minutes ago was we've got a playoff game, which only some of us have imagined years and years back. I actually wrote a term paper about it in high school in 1984. So I was thinking playoff at one point, but I don't know how many other people were on board with that. And then years later, just thinking about, okay, somebody came up with the idea of playing on campus, and we got a dose of that and how fun that could be last year. But a playoff game at Autzen Stadium, you talk about a home field atmosphere. And then on top of that, Ryan, of course, the oddity that who would have guessed? We could have been sitting here for hours selecting who could that first playoff opponent be for Oregon. James Madison.
Yeah. Pretty wild times. Yeah. I love the home game. Love the idea of getting the home game. I think that you should play all these home games at the cathedrals of college football. Everybody gets to showcase their stadiums. They get to showcase their campus, their universities. And that's a real gem. It really is. I mean, coming from where we were last year with the bye and missing out on that and watching that first weekend of that, I really was looking forward to this year. And then they ended up with the 5 seed, exactly what a lot of people wanted. So we're in a great place. Vibes are really good on the West Coast right now, Mark.
Before I let Matt cut loose on this one, I want to add one little footnote. The oddity of the formatting, of course. Oregon's the 1 seed in 2024, and they draw, Ohio State. They're the 5 seed in 2025, and they play James Madison.
Yeah, polar opposites. And, I think it's going to be fun. I expect a pretty good game. I think a little bit more maybe of James Madison than some of the other people out here that think it's going to be maybe a bigger blowout, but it is going to be an outmatched game. And everybody knows that. It's the largest point spread, I think they said, of all bowl games ever or something at their playoff games at this point. So it's obviously something for the Ducks now to go out there and see if they can actually meet that mark.
Ryan, my first question is, it's James Madison, and of course, Oregon's going to need to win 4 games to win the national title. Going to need to win 3 to get to the final game in late January. And yet, it's a playoff game. It's a really big deal, and it's at Autzen Stadium. In terms of play calling and overall approach, do you think Oregon staff says, hey, our playbook's open because this is a playoff game, we're not going to take any chances? Or, you know what, let's see if our base stuff can work against James Madison and we keep something for the Orange Bowl against Texas Tech, and we save things for Cignetti in Indiana if we get that far, get to the semifinals? Or you know what, it's a big game. You can't be cautious. You got to let it rip. Dan Lanning is an aggressive head coach. How do you think Oregon staff plays this?
I kind of think they're just going to run what they run. What I really like about Oregon is this year they can win in a variety of ways. They can win throwing the ball deep, throwing the ball intermediate, leaning on the running game. And so I do think they're going to try to set the tone and see if they can bully this team a little bit and run the ball. And if they don't need to throw the ball, I don't think they will, really. I think they're very comfortable with leaning on their defense, possession of the ball, taking the time off of the possession clock. I really think that they're a team that can do it a variety of ways. They can run tempo, they can run spread, they can slow it down, they huddle. Sometimes they go no huddle. So very versatile team. I'm expecting them to play the standard approach to it. Go out, run the ball. They've got 3 great running backs. See what you can do. The wide receivers people have been clamoring about all were at practice today in pads at the time when they let all the media in. So obviously looking good on that level. So if they have more weapons, they want to throw the ball, who's going to stop them, in my opinion? The crazy thing is that if you start, I think, looking ahead, you might get bit. And I would hate to see that happen for the Ducks this year. But I do think this first game, they can go out there and run what they want to do. The next game, though, I think Texas Tech could be a real sleeper. I don't know exactly how good that team is. And very, very up front, just scary team. The way they get after the quarterback. So that would be a heck of a game. I think that would be something that the rest of the country would really like to watch in Miami.
Yeah, especially since Indiana was able to be so effective up front in terms of harassing Dante Moore.
Yeah.
Is this somewhat of an untested team, or at least untested in a successful outing? Obviously, the Indiana game was the one loss. And then other than that, USC could have been the best team played. Iowa at Kinnick is certainly a different version of Iowa football. That's where they're dangerous. And obviously they came down to the final play. But many of the critics and detractors of Oregon football would say, okay, this is maybe the thinnest of the 11-1 resumes.
Yeah, it's a tough one because, you had your non-conference with Oklahoma State. They turned out to be terrible. Fire the coach. You have your allegiance with Oregon State. We're trying to keep that on the books. They turned out to be terrible. They fired their coach. You go to Happy Valley, and everybody's looking forward to that game. And, of course, the Ducks win at the end up that team goes off the rails. They fire their coach. So was it that Oregon was on some sort of, death march when it comes to taking these teams out? Or was it that these teams were really floundering right before Oregon played them? And I think that if you are a positive Oregon guy like myself, I think, wow, Oregon played so well that they might have knocked these guys off the pedestal, when instead, I think oftentimes it's just you're playing bad teams at bad times, and the inevitable is going to happen anyway, and you might just be the last straw that breaks the camel's back. So this was a team, I think you're right. Late in the year, they got tested, though. I think they played a really good USC team. I think they played a pretty good Washington team on the road. The Iowa game was the really good one because they really got in the deep end with Iowa. They had to play their style of football in their weather and ended up coming and winning at the end in an Iowa fashion. I mean, out-punted Iowa in Iowa, out physical Iowa at the point of attack, and played a game that was underneath 20 points and still won, which I don't think a lot of people expected the Ducks to be able to do. So I do think, though, that there was a pretty good schedule this year for the Big Ten. Didn't play Ohio State, didn't play Michigan. So you had some of those games obviously not on the list, but next year's a little different. Next year's schedule looks great.
All right, we got to talk a little Dante Moore. What decision he's going to make for the NFL. Obviously, that's a storyline, but let's kind of combine that with his playoff journey, which starts this Saturday. Do you think that his playoff performance is going to be definitive, is going to be decisive in terms of influencing the decision he makes? Is the calculus not that simple? And what are you looking for from Dante Moore in the playoff?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think he's an interesting cat. So first and foremost, I think a lot of people are expecting him to come back. And I think that's been kind of on the table all year, that was pretty much in the bag. I think he's in a really unique position with this class coming into the NFL, where he looks to be one of the better quarterbacks, and people are talking about him early on the board, right? So that's obviously a dilemma. You're getting paid at Oregon. I think the NIL thing is a little overstated at Oregon. But you're still getting paid in college, but you're not getting paid NFL first round at quarterback money. So, and you always want to start your career in the NFL as early as you can, so you can try to get to that second contract. There's all that stuff. But Dante Moore's a different guy. I mean, go back to his situation where he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He was going to come to Oregon. They had the coaching change. Kenny Dillingham left. He went to UCLA. He didn't really do what he thought he was supposed to do, or didn't really enjoy his time there. Went and transferred to Oregon to sit behind Dylan Gabriel for a year. And again, I don't know if anybody who's on the level that he was at is willing to go and not play. And so he goes willingly and says, this is what our plan is. We're going to do this. Never has any complaint about it, has a great time, enjoys the heck out of it. Now he comes in the driver's seat, totally comfortable, cool, calm, and collected, has made amazing plays down the stretch, really saved the Ducks on many of these games, including that Iowa game. But I still think that it's probably 50-50 that he might come back next year, even if they go and have a great run in the playoffs.
Now that I've scanned the schedule in my mind in regards to what I've seen, I saw the Indiana game, saw the Iowa game, those games basically gun to gun. Same thing with USC and a few others, Penn State. So I've seen this team play quite a bit of football and the better games. Who do you think? Well, let's go this route first, Ryan. Let's go the medical report.
Yeah.
Because obviously this, from a skill position standpoint, was a beat up football team. You know, they were going down to 4 and 5 wide receivers at some parts of the stretch drive there. So where do we stand in regards to the injury list, as far as you know?
Yeah. So today, actually, they released a video of all these guys in pads practicing. I don't know if they were really first and foremost. I think that the Ducks and their medical staff are very cautious, first and foremost, and I think they are very player focused and family focused on that level. And so I know for a fact that when DeCorian got injured, they were basically telling him and his family, "Hey, we're going to let you sit for as long as you need. There's no rush. We're not going to push you back just because you're having a great year and you're a great player. We don't need to get all this at once." Which I think is really good, right? And they had enough depth in that room. But you have to, lost right out of the gate. Then you have Jurion Dickey, who was supposed to get playing time on this team, who was looking to be one of the next guys. He leaves the program, right at the beginning of the year. And then you've got injuries during the year. And so you were down 3 wide receivers. You're down basically 4 wide receivers with Jurion being out. So now you're down to your 4th, 5th, 6th string. You're having guys that I don't think anybody thought they were going to depend on. And you had Kyler Casper also get injured earlier in the year. It wasn't utilized as much as we thought, but he's the big wide receiver. So yeah, this was a wild year, and you really had to lean on the run game. You really had to lean on extra tight ends, and you had to actually start putting tight ends in wideout spots, which was amazing to look at. Kenyon Sadiq, a guy who's incredible in the run block. They say one of the best run blocking tight ends Oregon's ever had. He's lower. He's only 6'2" instead of these guys that are 6'5", 6'6". So he gets leverage, man, and he's so strong. And then he's out to be able to make catches, and then they're splitting him out as a wide receiver, and he's going deep. So they were very creative this year. Will Stein actually talked about that today in his press conference. The offensive coordinators only really get the press release at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. And so Will Stein, man, he nailed it. He said, we just had to do a lot of different stuff this year, and it made them be creative. It forced them into being creative. So I think they can win in a lot of different ways. They want to run the ball first. Their offensive line got dinged up as well during the year. I think everybody will be healthy there. And I think the wide receivers are going to come back. I don't know if all are going to come back at the same time, but I expect to see them all this year. Another
obvious plot point in this game is that Oregon's going up against next year's UCLA coach. And I would have to think that Bob Chesney is going to, throw the kitchen sink at Oregon. But what's the feeling in terms of, hey, we're going to see a lot of this coach in the coming years in the Big Ten. What do you make of that angle? What's the chatter on the Bob Chesney part of this?
Yeah, I mean, for JMU, they think they're the next Big Ten team because they're bringing their coaches in. Signetti's doing his thing over here. What do they think Chesney's going to do? They think, hey, Notre Dame might be close to joining the conference. Could JMU go with them? But no, it's going to be interesting to see how this game unfolds. I think there's kind of two schools of thought here, right? There's the school of thought of, can James Madison play their game straight up against Oregon? I don't think really that many people believe that's going to be the case. So what do you got to do to make that happen? Obviously, you got to look for some turnovers. You got to force maybe a couple big plays. You got to try to maybe do something unconventional or maybe go against the metrics sometimes. I really don't know what you're going to see, but what I do like about Chesney. I do like his defense. He kind of runs a lot of the same stuff that Dan Lanning runs, the simulated pressure, rushing with 4 with a variety of different ways to do it. Very flexible type of defense. Sometimes bring everybody up into the box. Some guys push guys back, drop back linebackers into coverage as well, or defensive backs, defensive ends. Everybody can rush the quarterback. Anybody can drop back into coverage. So, they've got some really unique guys on that defense. That number 15 is a freshman, Sahir West. He's the freshman player of the year in their conference. He's everywhere. I'm assuming he's going to go transfer portal heavy because somebody's going to offer him some cash, man, because that guy, you can put the weights on him and he could really do some things. So I'm excited to see this team. I'm excited to see how Oregon plays them, and I'm excited to see how good JMU is.
Ryan, a quick one or two guys that for people that have not watched Oregon football this year that maybe you haven't mentioned in the last 15 minutes that people should be checking out.
Yeah, I think offensively, of course, you got to go with the 2 freshman running backs, the kind of thunder and lightning. Noah Whittington's the main running back, number 1. He's a veteran. He's been here a long time, come off the knee injury. But the 2 freshmen are really incredible. And De'Aaron Hill, number 23, and Jordan Davison, number 0. Both those guys are absolutely powerful, impactful players this year for this team. And then I think on the defensive side, another freshman to look out for, number 4, Brandon Finney. He's a cornerback, an absolute lockdown cornerback. He's been their best corner this year. Ife Obadegwu is the other corner on the other side, number 7, great player as well. But Brandon Finney has just been incredible this year as a true freshman. So future's bright. Dan Lanning, how he does with recruiting. Early on got the kind of moniker of a lot of transfer portal guys, and transfer portal guys have been great. Malik Benson, for example, has been the absolute man when it comes to this wide receiver crew because everybody's been injured, and Malik did a great job, stepped up, and that's a perfect example of the transfer portal, right? Because you got a guy who's bounced around to a couple different places. He finds a spot here. He blows up right at the right time for him. But this team is full of a lot of great players, a lot of great families. The vibes are really good with this team. I would not be surprised at all if this team makes a little bit of a run.
Anything else, Matt?
Yeah, Oregon was 13-0 or 12-0, as you know, last season, and had to play the Big Ten championship game instead of Indiana and Penn State going at it. They were the Big Ten bubble teams, and this year Oregon was the 3rd place team in the Big Ten. You missed the Big Ten championship game, but clearly a benefit, right? To get healthy, to not have to play an extra game, which is not a playoff. So where do you stand on just the usefulness and the value of conference championship games in the 12-team playoff era?
Oh man, Mark, we might need to get a new video for this one in the future. Yeah, of course, we all have opinions on this stuff. I like conference championship games, especially because you have these huge conferences. How are you going to choose these champions? You got to pick 2 good teams out of the thing and let them go. I do like ideas of maybe trying to get one extra opportunity to play other people in some sort of a game where it's looks like a play-in for the next group, because you're going to have this in the future where you're going to have these 2 teams up top, and then you're going to have these other, like you said, bubble teams on the outside, and then you're going to have tiebreakers for the top and tiebreakers for the middle and tiebreakers for the bottom, and you have so many teams in these conferences. So I do like a conference championship game. I try to go to a lot of games myself. I've been to plenty of those conference championship games. West Coast games, Santa Clara, Vegas was awesome. I went to the one last year in Indianapolis, amazing game. I would hate to see us lose that. Even it's a moneymaker. I know some people are like, well, blah, blah, but I think you can still use that, fit that into the schedule. I still think you need it to determine a champion. I do think it's a little wonky how they pick and choose who to have the game benefit and who to have the game not benefit, depending on if they win or lose. Obviously, I think there's room for improvement there. But I like the conference championship, and I think that crazy stuff happens on that conference championship weekend. And I also like that they just clear the schedule, and all you have is just the top teams from those conferences. Something about that weekend that I would hate to get rid of. For years, we didn't play in a conference championship because we played the round robin. And so we always, as Pac-12 or Pac-10 people before the Pac-12, we would always watch that conference championship week and think, hey, what would it be like if we had that? So I do think, and the only game that Autzen Stadium's ever hosted that's been like this at all was the first year of the Pac-12 when we did host UCLA, of all people, at Autzen. And so it'll be interesting. I think the future is bright for college football. I just hope they don't expand it too much and then ruin the whole thing.
Ryan Winter, Sports Chat 503. Ryan, tell the good folks what you have planned on your channel this week.
Oh man, I go live every Tuesday night, 5:30 to 7:30. You know, I love the live stream stuff. Super fun. We built a great community at Sports Chat 503. And then I just try to cover anything for the Ducks, any people who come in, media guys or whatever, and then other people from other fans from the other side. I've already had a couple JMU people in, and then if they win next week and they go to the next one, then we'll really ramp it up for obviously the Orange Bowl, and I'm already booked. So let's get down to Miami, Mark.
Ryan, great to see you as always. Love the enthusiasm. You always bring it for us, and you are just one of the great guys in the sport.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate what you do for college football, man. Thank you so much. Happy holidays to you guys.
Thank you.
Happy holidays, Ryan. Yeah, Ryan is just great. We always appreciate a chat with Ryan. He's always exuberant, enthusiastic. He kind of represents what's good about college football for sure. Folks, we appreciate you being here, the voice of college football. You know the deal. Matt and I would like to stick around as we did last Monday for quite a long time. Adam gets us off to a good start. Adam, we appreciate you. We'll get your call going here as well in just a second. Mark, the committee should be ashamed for placing silly James Madison and Tulane into the playoffs. How ridiculous. We should have the best 12 teams. Matt, why have you not criticized this? Rest in peace, Rob Reiner. Absolutely.
Well, Adam, it's less about the committee. It's more about the system and structure we have in place, because the system, not the committee implements the system, but the system has the group of 5 champion, and the system has the top 5 highest ranked conference champions. And the thing that Mark and I talked about last week was, if the ACC and other conferences chose a representative, Duke can be the champion, and that doesn't change. But if the conferences chose their best representative as opposed to champion, then Miami is the ACC representative. So it's really it's partly a conference thing, but if for 2026, the playoff policy should definitely change from top 5 highest ranked conference champions to top 5 conference representatives. They just change that one word, and that Duke problem, which enabled James Madison to get in, that problem goes away.
And lo and behold, here he is. Adam, appreciate you stopping by, man. How are you?
Hey, Mark. How you doing?
We're doing just fine.
Hey, Matt. How are you?
You get a little commotion going on there.
Yes. Hey, Grace. Grace. Hold on 1 second.
No problem.
Hey, Grace. Thank you. Commotion's
we appreciate
over.
it. We don't want to interrupt the family entertainment there, but yeah, we couldn't hear too well.
What I do for love. So I'll be quick. My first comment is, I think it's really unfortunate that James Madison is playing Oregon for a couple of reasons. I know the rules are the rules, but what we talked about was the 12 best teams getting in the playoff, and that just is not the case here with JMU and Tulane. I also think that this creates a terrible disadvantage for Oregon. Oregon, in its first-round playoff, is going to be playing an inferior team and then going to have to go on and play a very difficult Texas Tech team. That is not a recipe for success. You don't want to start off the playoff playing a cupcake and then have to play a team that is far superior. I think it's going to disadvantage Oregon. I think Oregon's going to lose against Texas Tech. And apart from the matchup with JMU, I say that because on October 25th, they only beat Wisconsin 21-7. They beat Iowa 18-16, and they beat Washington 26-14. So Oregon's offense, as explosive as it can be, is not necessarily immune to excellent defenses. And I think that's what they'll run in against Texas Tech. But I think the JMU game sets them up for failure precisely because they're playing a team with inferior talent. What are your thoughts?
I would say that, there's a two sides of the coin here. That yes, playing James Madison will not serve as adequate preparation for Texas Tech. Would very much agree with you there. But I would also say that Oregon gets to play a game, so it gets to kind of work out the kinks, whereas Texas Tech is sitting around for over 3.5 weeks. So could be rust versus rest. What's interesting about Oregon, Texas Tech, assuming that happens, and of course that's very likely to happen, is that it's not in the Cotton Bowl. I was thinking that they'd put Texas Tech in the Cotton and they'd put Ohio State in the Orange, but no, they didn't do that. So playing Texas Tech in Miami instead of Arlington, that certainly helps Oregon. But the question obviously would be how much. In terms of Oregon's offense, the thing we talked about with Ryan, we talked about a number of things, but one was that Oregon's had 3-4 top skill position players hurt, and those guys are, they're not even going to need those skill guys against James Madison. So I don't think they're going to get a huge workload, maybe a light workload, get some snaps just to kind of get back into game rhythm a little bit. But they don't need those guys to beat James Madison. And then so against Texas Tech, Oregon's going to have a full complement of players most likely. I'm not predicting Oregon to beat Texas Tech, but I think that Oregon will have some advantages and will have some resources that have not reflected the way the Ducks finished their regular season down the stretch.
So I think Matt's pretty well covered the angle of the bye week versus the non-bye week, the rested team versus the team that's had the ability to at least get out against a team in this case that we don't anticipate is going to push them to the limit, but we'll give them enough exercise. Yes, maybe I'm overstating the simplicity of the impact of the game. And we could go through the course of NFL history, of which this would apply more often than college football history, but also college football history. And I don't know that we could come up with, similar to the rematch theory of it being more difficult to beat a team twice versus a split, that we could come up with a definitive trend set on this matter.
Okay, that's a fair point. My second question is, do you believe that there's any remedy for the problem that I see, which is that certain teams have a much harder road to the national championship in the playoff than others? For example, assuming Ole Miss beats Tulane, they have to beat Georgia. Assuming that Ohio State makes it to the semis, Ole Miss would have to then beat Ohio State. So they have to beat Ohio State and Georgia. Now, if Alabama or Oregon make it to the national championship, they would have to go through Texas Tech. Oregon would have to go through Texas Tech and Indiana. Alabama would have to go through Indiana and either Oregon or Texas Tech. So I think that there's an issue with lower seeds having a slightly easier path to the playoff. And I'm wondering, do you think there's any equitable way to control for this when selecting the seeds for the playoff?
Well, I would say that, the gaps or disparities in terms of favorable brackets were much more pronounced last year, with Oregon being a 1 seed and yet getting Ohio State, the 8 seed, in a quarterfinal. And of course, you had Boise State as a 3 seed. You had Arizona State as a 4 seed. That's because, the top 4 seeds were conference champions. And I think that this year, the adjustment to have just the best teams as the top 4 seeds, it's a very good adjustment. It's created a more balanced bracket. Ole Miss is a 6. So Ole Miss should have a tough path having to go through Georgia and then Ohio State. If I had a gripe with the way this thing was seeded, not talking about bracketing, just seeding, I would have put Ole Miss ahead of Oregon, because the Penn State win did not turn out to be as big a win for Oregon. I personally would have put Ole Miss as the 5 and Oregon as the 6. So there are some seeding questions I think we could get into. And of course, Alabama getting in as a 9, not getting punished at all for its blowout SEC championship game loss. That's another issue as well. My big complaint, which I talked about with Mark last week on this show on Monday night, was why did the committee give us rematches? And of course, Ole Miss Georgia, it's not technically an instant rematch because Ole Miss has to win a game, but like Ole Miss is favored by $1 billion over Tulane, so it's extremely likely that Ole Miss will play Georgia. I just don't believe in having early stage rematches in national postseason tournaments. If there are rematches in the semis, such as Oregon, Indiana, there's a distinct possibility that will happen. Fine. Oregon will have had to have won 2 games to get there. Indiana will have to win the Rose Bowl over Alabama or Oklahoma to get there. So both teams will need to have done some work. But really, Ole Miss is almost certain to play Georgia, and that would make 3 semifinal rematches: Ole Miss Tulane, Alabama Oklahoma, and then Ole Miss Georgia. And to me, that's just lazy, because a postseason tournament, you want every matchup to be fresh. And maybe there are certain bracketing conflicts that you can't work around, but we see it in basketball. This team is on paper a 9 seed, but there's a bracketing conflict. You don't want 2 SEC teams playing each other in the second round, so you adjust the seed line by 1. I don't understand why the committee couldn't do that. Some people have told me that they're not empowered to do that, so that's a mistake. The just rematches in first, or preliminary rounds of postseason tournament is awful. That takes a lot of the juice out of Alabama, Oklahoma, and Ole Miss Tulane for me.
I have little to add to that. I completely agree. Unless it compromises the seedings in some egregious way, of course, you don't want to do that. But otherwise, you have to avoid, again, there's a difference between 2 teams earning their way to a rematch versus just being placed in the first round of a tournament as a rematch, especially in a sport like college football, where hardly any of these teams ever face each other. And then you've got this many rematches that are already scheduled in the first round. It's ridiculous. And then it may not surprise you, Matt, that the top 25 that actually makes sense has Ole Miss ranked number 5 and Oregon ranked number 6.
Okay, so in 2023, I believe it was 2023, Alabama beat Georgia 41-24 in the SEC title game. They lost in the national championship to Georgia 33-21, I believe, or 33-18. Indiana
2021. That was 2021.
21.
Yep. Wow. Okay, so I'm off by 2 years. It shows my age. So Indiana just beat Ohio State in the Big Ten championship 13-10. Let's assume Ohio State and Indiana meet up in the national title game, and Ohio State wins 20-17. Would you support a rule that says if teams split in the regular season and national championship game, that there will be an extra game to determine the national championship, so that we do not have Bama beating Georgia once and Georgia beating Bama once and one being declared the national championship, and likewise with Ohio State? Do you think that +1 would lead to a more consensus national champion and be fairer?
I on principle, I don't have too much of a problem with co-national champions. I don't find that offensive, but with a 12-team playoff, 4 playoff rounds, the winner of the national championship game is the national champion. I mean, Indiana would certainly get to say, hey, we went out 13-0 regular season, Big Ten championship, 15-1 overall, but Ohio State got them in the biggest game. I think the bigger issue is, earning your way into the playoff. I think it's less about the back end, given that we have 4 rounds of playoffs, and like the team that's left standing, it's hard to deny their place as national champion. And Alabama, Georgia, it did hit different, Adam. I would say in a 4-team playoff, or also we go back to LSU, Alabama in the BCS national championship game when it's a narrower frame, smaller pool of games, teams, possibilities. Then the idea of trying to resolve that dispute would contain more merit. But a 12-team playoff, last team standing generally is the team that should be in. But I think instead of worrying about the back end, we should be worrying about the front end, like having James Madison play Utah, having BYU play Texas, having Vanderbilt play Notre Dame, like having those bubble play-in games in early December to weed teams out, but also give them a chance to play their way in. I think that's where the focus should be in terms of a fairer, more equitable system for everybody involved.
So if this was 1985, Adam, I would agree with your proposal, because at that point there were no playoffs. There was a postseason game, but it was a bowl game, so it was a different type of postseason game, separate from what we determine as postseason games now that lead to a championship. There were certainly just data points of games, and therefore, if there was a rematch like Florida State in 1996, where one team won the regular season matchup, the other team won the bowl game, regardless of the scores, you're penalizing one team and you're elevating a bowl game to be some type of quasi playoff game in that matter that did not exist. But here, the situation is take your sport, pick your sport. We now include college football as a playoff sport. You play your regular season. Your regular season determines who makes the playoffs. Once the playoffs start, everybody's 0-0, and you are playing a playoff to determine the champion.
Okay, fair point. Last comment before I go. Do you believe that in the playoffs, the overtime rules should be changed? Because in overtime, I believe on the second overtime, a team must go for a 2-point conversion. And in the third overtime moving forward, it's just a matter of alternating 2-point conversions from the 3-yard line, which would reduce the national championship to one play. Do you favor revising those rules in overtime to lead to a more equitable result?
Adam, I write, in addition to Trojans Wire, I write at College Sports Wire. So basically the national USA Today college sports site for teams that aren't under the College Wire network umbrella, such as USC. So I wrote about resolving ties in college football and the overtime format. And I wrote about it during the summer after the home run derby decided the All-Star game, the MLB All-Star game in Atlanta. And, there was a really interesting conversation about that, right? That for the All-Star game, it was perfect. Fun, interesting, had everybody buzzing. Stars got to show off their home run power in kind of a tense winner-take-all format. It was great. But there were some people who said, ooh, this is how we should decide regular season baseball games, instead of what they do now. And that's totally different, because just think about it. And I'm going to get to football, but I'm just trying to prove a point here. Home run derby is batting practice pitching. It depends on how well the batting practice pitcher grooves the ball for Kyle Schwarber. Okay, you cannot decide regular season professional sporting events with a batting practice pitcher. That's it. If that was the case, we would batting practice pitchers would become $1 million employees. Who can groove the pitch the best. So that's nonsensical, but it leads back to overtime in college football. You don't want it to be a gimmick, and I feel that not only is the 2-point playoff a gimmick, but also giving teams the ball at the 25-yard line is a gimmick. They're already in scoring position. I would say put the ball at the 50 at midfield. You have to get at least one first down to get into long field goal range. You need to earn this. It's kind of like the way baseball currently resolves extra innings in the regular season. You put a runner at second. I'd be so much happier if I get why they're doing it, right? You don't want 19-inning games. You wear out pitching staffs. You know, the teams could be thrown off course for a week if they have to play a 19-inning game. I get that. I would like to see the ghost runner at first, because then there's just so much more effort that goes into it, and so the comparison in college football is, yeah, put the ball at the 50. You don't start in scoring range. You actually have to do something. And then the other thing on top of that, because we wouldn't want to have an endless series of possessions starting at the 50-yard line. So in my mind, it's each team gets one possession, and the team that has the ball second, if the first team scores 7 points, then the other team has to choose. You either kick the PAT and take the tie in a regular season context, or you go for 2 and the win, and that's it. And what we could do in the postseason, so that you don't have repeat overtimes, you simply lay down the rule. The first team, if the first team and the second team both score the same, first team wins. So if the first team puts up a 7, the second team has to get an 8 to win the game. So I think fewer possessions, but put the ball at the 50, make them earn it. But let's not have an endless series of innings. Let's just say you both get one shot at the ball. I think it's clean. I think you're not overworking the athletes. And of course, if a team has to play 4 playoff games to win a national championship, like, you don't want 8 overtime games in back-to-back weekends.
Okay. So I have not completely processed all of that I can make a call of whether I favor Matt's complete proposal or not, because before implementation, I need to know that I am fully on board. However, I will say I hate contrived situations in sports. Like, I think it's gimmicky. I think it's amateurish. Like, my daughter, from the time she started playing softball, well, after she outlived her Little League baseball career and had to move to softball at whatever, 8 or 10 years old. Yes, they put a runner on base an extra inning. Okay, where'd the runner come from? I don't like contrived situations. Put the ball at the 25-yard line. No, you start football games by kicking the ball off to start the game. Why are we just placing a ball at the 25-yard line? Why do we now catch kickoffs at the 2-yard line and it goes out to the 25? You can catch it at the 2 and it goes to the 25. You can catch it at the 24 and it goes to the 20. That makes absolutely no sense in terms of being consistent with the format and the structure and parameters of the field and the game. Makes no sense. So, but I also understand the practicality of not beating up the players for, an extra 2.5 hours. So we don't want Chiefs Dolphins 1971 to be replayed over and over and over and over. So there's a practicality. So I tend to like Matt's 50-yard line, because my initial response to overtime way back in 1997 in college football was, great, we have overtime. We don't have to have Michigan go 9-0-3 in 1990 again. We don't. Oh, they went undefeated. Oh, well, they tied 3 games, so they're not even close to being in the national championship race. Got it. That really makes sense. So nobody likes ties, but that format put the ball at the 25-yard line, obviously, as it does right now. And at that point, it was simply going back and forth between the 25-yard lines. The team that had the better place kicker, that being an immediate 42-yard field goal attempt, which especially 25 years ago plus was, you meant if you're going to be successful at that, most of the time you had a really good field goal kicker. So if you had an advantage in that area and special teams, you had a huge advantage. And now you're going to play national championship games from the 2-yard line. Really? Yes, you are right, Adam. I don't know the exact answer of your question and what would be the best format, but it does need to be altered for the playoffs. I totally agree.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you guys, and thanks for listening to my questions. Great points, and great show as always. So have a great evening. I appreciate it.
And thanks for the super chat.
Absolutely.
Adam and Gabe get together for the Rutgers show, everyone. That's on Tuesday nights, so tomorrow night. So it's convenient. Keep it in your mind. Tuesday with Adam and Gabe, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the Rutgers channel. All right. Matt and I would love to hang out for a few hours, but unless we kick it into gear, we got about 15 minutes, so we'll go 5 minutes per. We got our buddy Trey stopping by. Trey, what's going on?
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's been a while.
I know it. What have you been up to?
A lot of deer hunting. I got me
Okay.
a 9-point the other day, so that worked
right.
out pretty well.
I still don't know what that means, but maybe
A
you
9-point. You count as tines. Like if you kill a buck, you got them tines coming out of his antlers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you count them like 1,
All
2,
right. I
and 3.
should be able to figure that out, or maybe I did know that at one time. All
Yeah.
right. Very good.
So that worked out really well. So I'm done deer hunting for the year. I wouldn't quit until I got that one. So it'd been a whole month. And Matt, it's nice to see you. You're always enthusiasm as well as Mark. So it's great to see you both on the same time. But I'll tell you what, man, Texas A&M in Miami, they got probably the hardest road in the college football playoff. They got the hardest road because once they get done with each other, they got Ohio State. And if they can't even make it to that, they got to face Georgia. And I would not face Georgia in any more teams than Ohio State. You got the two biggest teams. I would either go to the Indiana or Texas Tech side than these two.
Yeah, well, that's why you don't get to be a seed outside the top 6. Like if you're a mid-tier seed, like then your quarterfinal, semifinal path is going to be bad. Texas A&M needed to beat Texas, would have been a top 4 seed. Probably would have been in Georgia's spot. But now A&M has that much more difficult bracket path. So that just. You don't want to be a mid-level seed. That's the basic point there. And neither team was egregiously misseeded. Like, entirely fair to have A&M 7 and Miami 10.
Don't lose to Louisville or SMU.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Either one of them. You can lose to one of them, but not both of them.
Miami got the potential, but you don't see them going very far. These 4 teams in the top 4 are the best. Not because they just seeded, but they showed throughout the year consistently they are the best 4. And the biggest factor and the biggest team that is hot right now is Georgia. I wouldn't face Georgia right now. They are finally starting to click with their defense. Their offense is starting to get better. And that is a team that will shut you down when it really means the most. I thought it was Ohio State throughout the year, even though they didn't have the most opponents. All of a sudden, Georgia started clicking, and it's starting to shut things down now.
Trey, you've been on this call for like 2 minutes, and usually I've torn apart like 3 of your points, but I'm not arguing with anything thus far.
No, usually when I'm on a roll, I do pretty well. But also, I love Group of 5. A lot of people hate on the Group of 5, and I think it is a waste of 2 spots. 1 spot would have been fine. But the second spot, you don't see James Madison beating Oregon. And a lot of people say Oregon's just as good. Well, last year's team is better than this team. And the previous Oregon teams are better than this team. I don't think Oregon's going to go very far. They should beat James Madison. It might be close in the first half, but they should blow them out. And Tulane and Ole Miss might be interesting. But the only one that really does matter, and with just 1 spot for the Group of 5 would have made sense, it would have been Tulane. I would have picked Tulane over James Madison because they seem like they would have contended better, especially the draw they have with Ole Miss versus Oregon. They have a better chance to go past the first round.
Yeah, we don't have to spend much time there. I don't know too many people that would argue James Madison against Tulane.
I don't know. I don't know what is everybody thinking about that one. I don't know why the committee. Let's go to.
Okay, let me step in and just reemphasize this point. The committee didn't pick James Madison. James Madison got in because it was one of the top 5 highest ranked conference champions per playoff policy. So the problem was the playoff policy. If the playoff policy said top 5 highest ranked conference representatives instead of champions, and that's a point Mark and I made last week, then James Madison doesn't get in. Also, the ACC and the other member conferences, like, they can format their own rules and procedures. And so the ACC had its own tiebreaker resolution system, which allowed 5-loss Duke to get in. If the ACC had drawn up different rules and policies, that Duke scenario doesn't happen, and that locks James Madison out. So I just want to be clear. The committee did not pick James Madison. It was the system that put this in place and allowed it to happen with the ACC not buttoning things down from its end.
Yeah, I misspoke on that. First thing, I wish they didn't do 2 group of 5s. I wish it was just 1. And if they would have picked Notre Dame, that they didn't have if they had a different playoff system, I think it would have almost been almost a perfect best 12 teams, almost perfect. Notre Dame could have been a great factor. They could have been a problem for a lot of people. I think a lot more people should be happy that Notre Dame's not in, because they could have gave a issue. They are that good. Jeremiah Love, he was that good. He was the sole guy that ran that offense. So they should be lucky they got Miami over Notre Dame, because I think Notre Dame would have beat Texas A&M in that rematch if they ever had one.
All right, Trey, we appreciate you being here, and obviously call back anytime this week.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, our buddy Trey stopping by. Let's get to our next guy. We've got Keith on the line. Keith, what's going on?
I don't think I'm Keith, sir.
Oh, that's Michael. All right, Michael, how are you?
Good, Matt. How you doing, sir?
All right.
All right. I will make this short, sweet, to the point. Everybody's dissing James Madison and Tulane. Maybe it's rightly so, but of all the G5 teams in the past and stuff like that, had they been in this year's playoffs, who do you think would have a legitimate shot to win the national championship?
In the history of Group of 5 football? In the history of Group of 5 football?
Yeah, ranging from Boise State back in 2006.
Sure. First of all, none of them would have won a national championship, in my estimation. I don't know that anyone would have won 2 games. But yeah, some of those best Boise State teams, obviously UCF in 2017 in particular. The 2018 team gets dismissed because they lost their bowl game, but they were undefeated as well. Of course, Cincinnati in 2021 did get a shot to play, and it didn't look ugly on the scoreboard, but it was clearly not a game. The TCU Boise State run of those teams that played each other multiple times in bowl games in the 2007 to 10, 11 range. The TCU Andy Dalton team that beat Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl.
Yep.
Yeah, but I don't think any of those teams could have run the gauntlet, number one, of games. Number two, that if you look at the teams that they played and defeated or played in bowl games, they weren't nearly close to national championship caliber. They were really good teams, but not of that caliber.
Matt, I know. Go ahead if you're going to say something, Matt.
Oh, pretty much agree with Mark. I mean, it's the Chris Peterson Boise State teams and the Gary Patterson TCU teams from the Mountain West. Absolutely. It would be interesting to see how 2008 Utah would fit in that larger conversation, especially since that team beat Nick Saban and Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. That would be the only team I'd add to it.
My thing is, there's some good G5 teams and stuff like that, but is it ever going to happen that, or are they always going to get like the bottom of the barrel treatments, you think? Maybe they like.
Well, some years there's a really special unbeaten Group of 5 team that really has that extra element. But I mean, we're only 2 years into the playoff, and so far we haven't seen that kind of team. But in the future, I think we'll know if there's something really special, and we'll just have to wait to see if that happens.
Mm-hmm. Not bad. No, I was just wondering stuff like that. So I think both of them might be like similar. No, James. I mean, I think the Tulane Ole Miss game will probably be something similar. Maybe the Oregon, but between, I gotta ask you this: Tulane or JMU, who would have the better chance at the upset?
Tulane, especially since Ole Miss doesn't have Kiffin. But I do think Ole Miss and Oregon win comfortably. But if you had to give me a choice, absolutely Tulane.
Sounds good. All right, Mark, I appreciate it. I'm sure I'll see you throughout the week and stuff like that. I don't know if I'll see you being long Friday night because I got a test I got to take Saturday morning. It's gonna be all day and stuff like that. But I might sneak in though.
All right, Michael. Thank you for the schedule update.
Matt, you'll be back next Monday?
Yes, we'll be here all the time.
Well,
It's
I know that,
playoff
but I
time.
didn't know if this was Matt's last appearance for the season.
No, hopefully not. Matt's welcome anytime.
All right, all right, see you guys.
All right, Michael.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
being here. All right, let's keep it rolling here with our final call. I believe we've got Keith on the line.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good.
All
How
right.
are you?
I'm doing good. Funny hearing Adam's wacky ideas. You guys are saints to work through them all.
Well, he continues to bring him to the table, and I typically shoot him down, but I think he's got something with overtime now. I don't have the answer because I've not thought of it, for one thing, but can you imagine a national championship game being determined by somebody, running one in from the 2-yard line, then the other team can't, and that's the end of it.
That's the way it is in the NFL, isn't it?
Playing no
The
overtime.
2-point playoff. Yeah, that's not an
Yeah.
NFL thing.
Well, it's like whoever gets in the end zone most in overtime in the NFL win it. It's
Not
kind
from
of the same
2-yard
thing.
line. Not from the 2-yard line, Keith.
Not from the 2-yard line, yeah. So I just don't mean to be devil's advocate all the time, but I can see the logic from the 2-yard line. If one team scores and one team doesn't, that's good enough to declare a winner. Now,
In regular season games.
in regular season games, and I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, okay.
Yeah,
So
have the kickers kick extra points and move them back 5 yards and see who can make the most extra points and at what point does somebody miss. That would be just as valid.
was that Matt's idea or Adam's to start at the 50 instead of the 2?
My
That's-
idea.
That was your idea. That's interesting. That'd be something to think, and maybe you split the difference and say the 35 or something. Yeah.
No, it's got to be 50 because
It's gotta be 50.
35. You're still that's scoring range. You
Okay,
got to get at least one. You got to get at least one first down to move into scoring range.
okay, but the first point I really wanted to make was, Adam was 1 point off in his early points. Says that the 4 top are the 4 best teams. I don't think Texas Tech is the best team. I think against any of the big 4 Big Ten teams, would be double-digit favors against Texas Tech. I think all the 6 SEC teams would be double digits against them. And I think Miami would be close, like 8 or 9 points against Texas Tech. I just don't see Texas Tech as a good team. I see Texas Tech as a team that snuck to the top of the Big 12, which wasn't that hard this year.
Okay,
So
Keith.
let-
I'll let Mark take a crack at this one, but I'm just going to say, just in terms of the sports books in Vegas, I'd say, or if Oregon's favored, and I'm not entirely sure Oregon would be favored, but if Oregon is favored, I guarantee you, it's not going to be anything more than 2.5 points over Texas Tech.
All right. So, Keith, basically, my rebuttal is simply along the same lines that if you have watched all these football teams played and studied the 22 film and all that deal, and you believe that Texas Tech is that inferior to the rest of them, then I'm not going to argue with your scouting report. However, from a Vegas point spread line, what Matt is telling you is completely correct. Miami would not be. I have no idea exactly, and I am very good at this from week to week. I can guess the line of a football game and come within a half a point almost all the time going from week to week. I'd have to think about these lines, but yes, there would not be much separation between Texas Tech and most of these teams. I got to think that the largest point spread we would see would be against Ohio State and then probably Georgia by a touchdown, maybe something in that range.
I'd take those odds against Texas Tech for everybody you're talking about. 3 points
You're going to
against.
give me Texas
Or-
Tech and 8 points against Miami.
Yep. And
All right, I'll take it.
Okay, I'll take Texas Tech. I'll take Oregon -3 against Texas Tech.
Just a
You're
second
giving me
ago, it's a
that, right?
two-score game. You
What's
said it
that?
was going to be like 14 points just
Well,
like
that's what
3
I'm
minutes
saying
ago.
is that Oregon will easily beat them by 3 points. I'll take Oregon -3 if that's what you're giving me.
I don't know if that phrase has ever been uttered in the history of football. So and so is going to beat somebody easily by 3 points.
By 3 or more.
I think he just means that he'll easily cover.
Easily cover.
Let me
Right.
just tell you. Let me just tell you. If hypothetically, if Alabama was favored by 10 over Texas Tech, man, I would be running to the bank, push all my chips in the middle of the table to take Texas Tech +10 against
All
Alabama.
right. So time is going to bear us out on that because we're going to see some of these matchups. As
Yeah,
so
one for sure.
We'll see. Okay, but the other point I want to make, and we can finish on this, is can either of you believe that Caleb, Alabama coach, help me.
Kalen
DeBoer, okay. Kalen DeBoer and his family are happy at Alabama, and they like being at Alabama. When Kalen DeBoer loses to Florida State, to Miami, not to Miami, to Oklahoma, and what was their third loss?
Georgia.
Okay, Georgia, yeah, that's a tough game. But when he's losing those, but even though the Alabama fan base has got to be ripping on him. I mean, he's lost 7 games in 2 years. How long did it take Saban to lose 7 games?
About 4 months.
2 years.
What?
Because he had a bad first season.
You're right. Yeah,
He
you're
lost 6
okay.
his first year. So 7
Yeah,
and
he
6,
did. He got
and
off
then-
to a slow start. I stand corrected on that. Yeah.
But no, your point is well taken, Keith.
Yeah.
So we just jumped on you there. But yeah, your point is well taken. He's not meeting the Nick Saban standard or / the Alabama standard. But let's understand that if Nick Saban continued to coach at Alabama, I guarantee that Nick Saban's winning percentage would be dwindling. Not that he would have blown up and not been the coach that he is, but just by sheer winning percentage and probabilities, Nick Saban couldn't keep up with Nick Saban's standards.
So back to my point, do you think Kalen DeBoer and his family are really that happy to be at Alabama? Or do you think that maybe after 2 years of getting criticized for every single loss he gets and not winning being close to a national title in his 2 years, can they be happy? They've got to be taking a lot of crap in their own neighborhood.
Well, I can't read his mind or his family's thought process, but I would say that how the Oklahoma playoff game goes could very easily redraw the boundaries and the tension points. I know that DeBoer's come out with a statement saying he likes being at Alabama. I'm not saying that's gospel truth. I will say that if he loses to Oklahoma and pitchforks might be out, maybe that influences his decision. I would say that being at Alabama, like, that is such a premier job that, to me, and this is, I'm not saying this is what DeBoer is thinking. I'm just saying, if I was in DeBoer's shoes, like, I want to make sure that I give it my very best at Alabama. If my tenure comes to an end, it's because the athletic director and the fan base don't want me there anymore. Like, I think Alabama is a place where you try to make it work as much and as long as humanly possible. That's just me. I'm not saying that's what DeBoer thinks. Like, I don't think you leave Alabama for another job. Like, it's kind of like, you don't leave managing the Yankees for any other team in baseball. You don't leave coaching the Celtics for any other team in the NBA. That's the Alabama brand. So, but I'm just speaking for myself. So I will say that if Alabama loses to Oklahoma, maybe then DeBoer rethinks his position and jumps ship. But until then, really hard to say.
Mark, what about the podcast? Weren't the podcasts in the Bama channels saying if he were to dare lose the Iron Bowl, he was done at Alabama?
Who was saying this?
The Bama Network, Bama Podcast Network.
I can't say that I'm partaking in too many Alabama podcasts.
Well, I heard that.
And
They
that's
said
true.
there were a bunch of online sources that were saying that a loss in the Iron Bowl would have been the last straw, and it would have been the end of
Sure.
DeBoer's reign in Tuscaloosa.
Well, we'll never know, first of all, because they won the Iron Bowl
That's right.
and made the playoff.
Yeah.
So we will not know that. I kind of doubt it, but that's just me talking and thinking that they would have given him another season because the guy is well proven. He's an excellent football coach. Now, is he the right fit for Alabama? And is he going to be able to achieve their standards year after year? I don't know. That remains to be seen. I think we've seen both the good and the not so good out of him and his team in 2 years. Has he been an utter failure? No, by no measure. Has he been an over-rousing success? No, not to date, but he does have a playoff run in front of him that could change the narrative completely.
Yeah, and I just think when is the last time Alabama has lost 4 games in a season and 3 games in a season in a row?
The last time they lost 3 games was under Nick Saban in 2010.
And probably Saban the year before lost 4 games that year?
Well, in 2007.
In 2007. 2007 and 2010. But they didn't have back-to-back years of 3 or 4 losses then.
No, not at all. Nothing close.
Not until
No.
Schellenberg or whoever was back there earlier.
No, he obviously was ripping off 11-1 seasons, Nick Saban. He's arguably the greatest of all time, and I think most people agree that he is. Yeah, that's what Kalen DeBoer is trying to follow up. That's what he's succeeding.
And that's got to be tough. And like I say, the family, as they're walking through and moving through Tuscaloosa and the kids in school and everything, I just have a feeling Kalen DeBoer is not as happy as Alabama as his last statement says he is.
Okay, well then you probably know him better than we do. I don't try to get into people's heads that unless their words have betrayed them in the past, that there's some type of a trend. But I am not master psychologist to figure out who is living out their words or honest to their words versus who is putting up a facade. So I'm going to believe Kalen DeBoer that he wants to be the head coach at Alabama. And to Matt's point, that is a job that if he is dismissed, he will most likely never. You could argue that there are maybe 0 jobs at that level. You could argue there are 3 or 4 at most, and maybe he will never get that shot again. So I would think that he wants to give it his best and prove that he can be a success at Alabama. He's been a success at every step that he's taken from the FCS level to this point. So he's obviously got a desire to win and a passion to win, and he is a big competitor and wants to prove his worth.
Yeah. And if they run to a national title under DeBoer this year through the playoffs, it'll certainly crush my record, my name.
Well,
Keith, I would just say, Keith, I would just say that since you're, focused on Michigan, my personal opinion, John Harbaugh. With the Ravens going nowhere, with that tenure seemingly running out of steam, it's time for him to hit the reset button, and Michigan would get someone who is not really an outsider, because, you're aware of how many Michigan coaches have become Baltimore Ravens coaches and vice versa. I think there would just be instant familiarity, and yet John Harbaugh would not have the baggage of Jim. To me, that's the move which makes so much sense for Michigan.
And he has a history of working with Wink Martindale as defensive coordinator, so we would have that area covered right from day one. It would be a good move for Michigan to get John Harbaugh. I just don't know if it's that. I think there's a lot of NFL teams that would like to get John Harbaugh.
I'm pretty sure that whoever is the next Michigan head coach is a better head coach than Sharon Moore.
Certainly more mentally stable.
Well, that's without a doubt. Yes, that's just a sad situation, and there's no question. Yes, he has life issues to deal with, but from a football standpoint,
yeah,
we'll never
and
know
I
if
just
he would have succeeded at Michigan. However, yes, that
well,
incident gives
Moore
us
had
some
one
idea.
thing that a lot of coaches don't. He beat Ohio State once. I don't say it twice. Harbaugh was the coach for the first time that Moore was coaching on the sideline. During the week,
Sure.
he wasn't coaching.
Yeah.
He wasn't head coach. But he beat him. He beat Ohio State once. So that's always a feather in somebody's cap if you beat Ohio State.
For sure.
For sure.
All right, Keith.
Good.
Anything
Go
else?
Blue, guys.
All right. Thanks, man. Always good to hear from Keith. We get a super chats coming in. We've got J.R. Morris. Appreciate you being here. Thank you for the contribution. Thoughts on seeding in second round? Why is the second round predetermined and not based off of the seeding, meaning reseeding after the first round, depending on who wins, just like college basketball, the NFL, MLB, and the NBA?
Well, the first point is that college basketball, baseball, and the NBA don't reseed. Yeah, the NFL is the one that does reseed. But to answer why is the second round predetermined, this is a travel and logistics thing. You want fan bases to be able to plan ahead. And obviously the first round is home games, but then the second round, the quarterfinals, are neutral sites. So you want to be able, and it's the holidays too. That's the other thing. If this was at a different time of year, maybe you think about reseeding, but it's the holidays. Like, you can't have people making Christmas and New Year's travel plans and not know where they're going to go for the quarterfinals. You need to have some reliability there.
Thank you for the super chat. And we've got one coming in from Adam. So this show basically sponsored by Adam. Thank you so much for that, to get us to a second hour. So everyone congratulate Adam, pat him on the back. Mark, on this show, will you congratulate Miami for winning the 2002 national title and being the victim of a horrible pass interference call? Okay, Matt, you think Lincoln Riley is a viable candidate for Michigan. All right, so I'll take the first one on. So you've hit a hornet's nest here, Adam. I don't know that you want to take this one on, because we can argue all night as to whether that call was made correctly or incorrectly. Because first of all, the typical football fan viewer confuses lateness of the call, tardiness of the flag being thrown, with the correctness of the call. Those are two different things. If you watch the play, you would see that Chris Gamble got held up while the ball was in the air. No, I'm sorry. He was held up before. That holding could have been called easily on that play before the ball was ever, somewhat in flight. I'm sure it would have been released by the quarterback, but that play could have been called easily as a hold against the cornerback. It was a just penalty. It had the same result, first down at the 1 yard line. They're throwing a pass from like the 6. So regardless of whether it's holding or pass interference, the correct call was made in its result. I would have called holding. Let's understand something else. People that don't know the logistics and how that game played out, they only know that play. Miami got ripped off. They should have won the national championship. Is that Ohio State was successful on 3 consecutive drives, meaning from the 25-yard line in. So Miami had plenty of opportunity to win that game, but Ohio State completed that drive for a score. Then they completed another drive for a score. They were down 24-17. So they had to score. Then they get the ball back and they score again. Miami had the opportunity to win the game there. Then they stopped Miami. Ohio State won 3 consecutive drives to win that game. And go back, you can find it on YouTube, go to about 2:45 on the clock. And I could point out a number of things that went against Ohio State. When people bring up that game as being a poorly officiated game, you know what my response is? It definitely was a poorly officiated game. Ohio State got ripped off. It might not have ever gone to overtime. So there's a play where Dan Fouts even comments, and Keith Jackson after this play, it's 3rd and 7, and there's a pass completion to Chris Gamble. Number 1, he's inbounds. Number 2, he's past the marker. They somehow call him out of bounds. No replay, no nothing. Ohio State would have converted a first down, had a new set of downs with like 2:30, 2:40 on the clock. Not quite enough to run out the rest of the game, but get very close. But instead, they're punting deep in their own end with 2:45 on the clock, sets up Miami for an easy return to get into field goal scoring range. And there you go. So I can point out a number of plays in that game in which Ohio State was a bit ripped off, or the victim of questionable calls, at least. But that Gamble play was not a questionable call. That was a first down, Ohio State, with 2.5 minutes left. All right. Matt, you can take on the second question.
Yeah, the problem with that whole incident was the tardiness of the call, because Miami guys were on the field, they thought they had won, and then oopsie, that's really what rankled everybody. If the penalties called in a timely manner, we're not having the same conversation. It's not nearly the same controversy. All right, so Lincoln Riley, viable candidate. I mean, I suppose Michigan, could take a look, but I would say that Michigan is not a natural fit for Lincoln Riley, and the Rich Rod era, I think, is the instructive example there, that going with a fun freewheeling offense first coach for Michigan, like with Rich Rod, that definitely did not work out. I think Michigan is a smash mouth program. It's a defensive line program, and you don't hire Lincoln Riley to do that. But if a lot of top candidates say no, then having Lincoln Riley as a excuse me, like a 4th or a 5th fallback plan, then in that context might make a certain amount of sense. But I think that Michigan can certainly aim higher than Lincoln Riley, especially given Riley's struggles in the Big Ten on the road at USC. I think Michigan definitely has to look in other places first. I said John Harbaugh, but there are other certainly strong candidates. Like, I think Jeff Brom, and I know that he stayed at Louisville because he rejected Penn State, but making a run at Jeff Brom, I think, would make more sense than Lincoln Riley, just if you were to compare the two. But like, Michigan is in a position to swing for the fences, and Lincoln Riley would certainly feel like settling to me.
There we go. Appreciate y'all being here at the Voice of College Football. Comments, questions are welcome there in the chat. Of course, you got Matt and I for another 42 minutes or so, something in that range or beyond, depending on what you would like us to do tonight. But we are here at your service, and vocfb.com for the latest on college football. Of course, a number of interesting articles there. Also, vocfb.com for your favorite 2 brands that you can combine into apparel, meaning the voice of college football and your favorite team. All right, let's get to our next call. We got DeReal MVP on the line.
Hello, Mark. Hello, Matt. How are you doing today?
Good. How's it going?
I think the last caller and Adam are doing. It's a very smart move. Hey, this is the guy I want for the last caller's case. Let me throw as much shade to him as humanly possible and explain why he's absolutely horrible for Alabama. I want him, but he's absolutely awful for Alabama. And then for Adam, oh man, I hate Lincoln Riley. He's not a good coach. Let me ship him the first train out of town. Very smart moves headed by these callers. I appreciate it, but I can see right through your nonsense.
Nice.
I wanted to ask you all, I'm not sure if you all saw, but Michigan continues to take losses despite not playing, which is amazing. I mean, they're just setting new records. Kalen DeBoer has basically said no, and he released a statement. His press conference he was asked about, he said no again. He's out of the running. Like, you know why I think he's out of the running? Because he said he's out of the running. So I'm going to believe him. And then Kenny Dillingham basically was in tears when talking about what Arizona State football meant to him. So I believe he's out of the running as well. Michigan's just I heard this term on the Monty show when I saw continue using it, radioactive program. It's a complete dump from top to bottom. Their hockey, basketball, and football coach all this decade has been induced in some sort of scandal. Okay? Their program is just a dumpster fire. Why would you, as a respected person, want to tarnish your reputation by going to that heap, that cesspool? It's like going to Enron after their scandal's been undone. Like, why would you want to do that to yourself? Like, I think they have to settle because they're just a toxic place to work.
I think that a number of Michigan employees have had a lot of toxicity, and I think that one thing that absolutely has to happen to real MVP is Ward Manuel needs to be fired as athletic director, and I'm actually kind of surprised it hasn't happened yet. I guess Michigan has to do its due diligence, but like that needs to happen sooner rather than later. He obviously did not do his job in terms of oversight. So I would agree with you insofar as a cleanup process needs to happen in Ann Arbor. That is for sure.
Yeah, it's a complete joke that he's not fired, and it's honestly just a slap of the face to anybody who wants like civility and respect and any decency to continue because he's clearly the problem. I mean, if you have A, B, and C, and you're the common denominator for A, B, and C, you're clearly the person at fault. He's clearly choosing people unqualified to lead people, and he has to go. It's a complete joke. But I wanted to ask you all about these playoff games that's coming up. Matt, I have this theory that Alabama could really blow up the sport in the next few weeks. What happens if Alabama beats Indiana? Because the line's only -7 if Alabama, Indiana for Indiana. It's -7. So what do you think the reaction would be?
It would be that Big Ten teams that played soft non-conference schedules were not prepared to take on SEC teams in high-stakes battles. And I think, that is one of the really big storylines is what happens when we have the Big Ten playing the SEC in the playoff. Naturally, Georgia versus Ohio State is going to be another flashpoint, assuming those two programs get that far. So Alabama beating Indiana, it would be a massive statement for the SEC, no question about it.
Yeah, I think it'll expose the playoff as being more than enough. Like, I'd be happy with an Indiana-Georgia national championship game played next week, and then there's no controversy. Or even a 14 playoff between Indiana, Georgia, Ohio State, Texas A&M. I think we have a clear 2 and 4. I think most years we have a clear 2 and 4, but we had to expand to 12 for participation trophy reasons. And speaking of that, Joe Klatt, he made waves today when he was talking about how he would see the tournament, and he said March Madness is by far the worst way to determine a bracket because it doesn't determine a true champion. A bunch of people got offended by that. I'm worried those people that got offended by that are infecting college football because I'm seeing a lot of James Madison Tulane love this week as the little guy. I understand people want Cinderellas, but at what point as people within the college football community understand how college football works, we need to push back and say this can't happen. Like, this is so unlikely to happen, you would destroy the sanctity of the sport.
So I'm curious.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, man.
I just think that I think the group of 5 topic is sensitive this year because 2 teams are in, not 1. We would all agree James Madison shouldn't be there, but again, playoff policy, ACC policy allowed that to happen. The real MVP, I think you even said this in the chat that the structure of the sport allowed James Madison to get in. So I would agree with you. Like, we need to restructure the sport so that James Madison style situations do not recur. But on the larger point, the group of 5 getting one, I'm not talking about 2 teams. I'm just talking about the general concept of ensuring that the group of 5 has 1 seat at the table. 1 seat at a 12-chair table does not strike me as an outrage. I do think that this is why we're going to get to 16, because then giving the group of 5 1 seat at a 16-chair table just feels even, less intrusive relative to the SEC and Big Ten schools, the power conferences. So I think that just the fact that James Madison is taking up a spot that could belong to Vanderbilt, BYU, Notre Dame, pick your team, that's why it's a sensitive topic. But, usually that's not going to happen. And moreover, the ACC and other conferences can amend their own rules and policies, not to mention the playoff. The playoff can amend its policy in 2026 to ensure that we don't get a James Madison style situation. I don't think, Darrell MVP, you'd find anyone who'd say, you know what, James Madison being in the playoff is exactly right. Nailed it. This is how it should be. I don't think anyone thinks that way. So that's altering the conversation this particular year.
Yeah, I'm just curious, Darrell, for a guy that would like to see possibly just a national championship game and at the very most would like to see a 14 playoff, that you care that the 10th or 11th best team in the country is being left out.
I don't like it. I want to see competitive football games. And I don't want to see a game where I basically know in the first quarter it's going to be completely over. And I do think it's a nice story for Vanderbilt or teams that actually earn it based off the field, off merit. I just want a merit-based system in my sports.
Yeah.
I'm just against the participation thing in society in general. And I think that's probably what's under my crawl. Can they win it all like Vanderbilt? No, they're not good enough to win it all. But are they good enough to win a game? Yes. Vanderbilt's good enough to beat Ole Miss if they were in that spot.
Yeah, not to nitpick, but I think people overuse the term participation trophy, These teams won football games to earn the spot. Now, whether it's truly earned, obviously they are not of the caliber of the other teams, but they didn't get the spot from just participating. It wasn't like there was a random draw among all the group of 5 teams, and this is what we came up with. It was Georgia State and it was Kennesaw State, and those are your 2 teams. So it was not a participation trophy.
I could use the time diversity instead if that would be more apt, because these are diversity picks.
There you go.
That we are having. But I wanted to ask you, Matt, in terms of these bowl games that are happening, it feels like a lot of players are just opting out and there isn't any juice to these bowl games. So what do you think about the idea that these bowl games could be like the FCS game for next year, or maybe just have them like in the spring game instead, these type of matchups? Because it feels like bowl games are just going completely away. Like 5 years ago, people would argue over the phrase meaningless bowl games, but now people are just completely accepted that they're all meaningless.
My idea for reviving the bowl games, well, a couple. One would be that instead of the prevailing or currently existing conference tie-ins, like we should just have actually, this is Mark's idea. Mark had the storyline bowl, that every bowl should be a storyline. Like, these 2 historical programs have never played each other or haven't played each other in 50 years, match them up. Or like the 2 teams that just missed the playoff. No, so it was going to be Notre Dame versus BYU in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, but then, of course, Notre Dame opted out. But like, bowl game should be aiming at special matchups. That's part of it. But then the main thing in terms of the player opt-outs, these bowls need to become what the Players Era college basketball event in Vegas is. You need to throw a big NIL bag at these players. That, winner gets $1 million and the losing team gets $500,000. You just have to throw NIL sweeteners into these bowl games to get these players to play. Because if you don't, then they're just gonna continue to opt out. I have a Trojans Wire show or a USC channel show tomorrow, and already at least 10 high-profile USC starters are not going to be playing. So it just takes the air completely out of the balloon with that game. So I think NIL sweeteners is the way to, revive these non-playoff bowl games. It's definitely a concerning trend.
So it is nonsensical to me that these NIL contracts don't include bowl games, that it's just not stipulated that your participation for your team includes the completion of the season. And it's the understanding of everyone that's ever watched college football that the completion of the season is after the postseason game. Like, I don't understand.
It's a great point.
Absolutely. Matt, I know you have interesting ideas to fix conference championship week. My idea that I'll throw out there that Mark seemed to like a little bit is you have 8 weeks of your conference, and that 9th week is just a flex week where you will have your conference championship week. So one will play 2, and then the third seed will play the highest ranked team based on the conference standing that they haven't already played. Now the 3 seed will host the home game as well. And you continue doing that on down the line.
I'm a big fan of flex games. I think that is the biggest thing in college football scheduling that needs to be done, which isn't currently done. So, you could slice and dice that various ways in terms of exactly how to format it. But hey, flex game plans are a winner with me on a general level.
Okay, I'm also a big fan of flex games, and we need more of them in the sport to determine it.
Because you have these 16, 17, 18 team conferences, you're not going to be able to play everybody. So in the middle of the season or late in the season, the conferences need to say, hey, these 2 teams in our conference are really good, but they're not on the preset schedule because we can't play everybody. Have them play a big game. Like that is it should be really obvious by now that these conferences need to incorporate flex scheduling into their regular seasons.
Right. My favorite example is Duke. Somehow got to the ACC championship and won it. But their tiebreaker system didn't include for the fact Duke went 0-2 against teams above 500 in the ACC. How is that not even a factor? That they literally didn't beat a single team that went above 500 in their own conference.
Yeah, so if the ACC had a flex game where Duke had to play Miami and Georgia Tech had to play Virginia, like, isn't that just so much better than just sticking to your preset schedule? I mean, it should be very obvious the need for flex games.
Absolutely. And do you think next year, in addition to the G5, like only going to get 1 spot, they should have a no rematches clause in the college football playoff? Because we've gotten 2 rematches in the first round. I feel like that's taken some of the energy out of this playoff.
That no rematches until the semis.
So you would move as well Georgia. To me, that was the biggest tragedy of the bracket, which Georgia didn't get rewarded at all for winning the SEC championship.
Yeah,
Because,
and Ohio State really didn't get punished for losing the Big Ten championship. Yeah. So let's just deal with that. Mark and I both agree Ole Miss should have been seeded 5. Oregon should have been seeded 6. I think Georgia should have been seeded 2. Ohio State should have been seeded 3 to honor conference championship game results. I think Alabama should have been seeded 10 instead of 9. A lot of different seeding decisions that I would have made compared to what the committee ended up with.
Right. Now, which way would you flip it for the seedings? Would you flip them up a spot? Would you have Ole Miss 5 or 7? I guess is
Ole
the
Miss
question.
5. Mark and I both said Ole Miss 5, Oregon 6.
Okay. I found the committee's answer telling that they were eye tests. The reason they flipped them was based on the committee chairman was they thought Oregon was the better team than Ole Miss, but they didn't have the resume points to put them above Oregon, which to me that shouldn't be the case because you need the data to validate a team. Like there's plenty of time I'm watching these 9-3 teams beat a 5-5 or 6 and a 4-5 team, and I think that 9-3 team is elite, but then they play another 10-2 team next week and they get destroyed. And that's my problem, particularly with Notre Dame, is they beat on a bunch of cupcakes and look elite doing it. But when they play somebody halfway with the pulse that's in the top 12 in the playoffs, they lose.
Yeah. No, I mean, with Oregon, again, the Penn State win, at the time, we all thought it was a huge, massive win. But over the course of the season, you couldn't really say it was a huge, top tier kind of win. And Oregon lost to Indiana, didn't play Ohio State. So absolutely, Ole Miss should have been seated ahead of Oregon.
And final thing I'll ask you about, Matt, is there are some fringe people, namely the Big Ten and some on social media, that are pushing for a 24-team playoff. I don't think I've ever gotten your take on the 24-team model, which would also include 4 from the SEC, 4 from the Big, 3 from the ACC, 3 from the Big 12, and 2 from the G5.
Yeah, we need to see what 16 looks like before we even think about 24. Let's just put it that way. That 16, the thing about 16 is everyone can see it's how it parallels the NCAA tournament. A 1 versus a 16, 8, 9, 5, 12, no buys. It's clean and neat. 24, not only will you have buys and it would be clunky and it would be now you're talking about a 5-round tournament. A 5-game postseason tournament, asking players to do that much, that's problematic. But also, if you have 24 teams, that means 4 lost teams are getting in. No way, no how. I do think 16 is good. You mentioned the point about, not having too much group of 5 representation. I think having one group of 5 team goes down more smoothly and therefore is easier for everyone at the table if it's 1 out of 16 as opposed to 1 out of 12. So I think, and people will say, well, it's just going to increase. It's going to be 24. It's going to be 32. I think 16 really should be where we settle and stay for a good long while. And so 24 should be a non-starter. 16 is the real conversation we should be having.
I absolutely agree with that, Matt. I mean, Mark, I saw your visceral reaction when I said a 2014 playoff. Like, what was going through your mind, Mark, to get that reaction out of you?
Well, I think for one thing, until it's disproven, maybe in the NIL era, we've only lived it for a few years, so we shall see. There is just such a gap between talent and level of play in college football as we cascade down the ranks that I just don't think it's going to make for good football. Now it will when you have, and I have to try to cycle through the seedings, but when you had the middle of the bracket, the middle of the pack playing each other, sure, you're going to have some competitive games, but they're going to be among teams that have no chance of winning a national championship. So for that particular night, watching Washington play Tennessee, is that going to be a nice football game to watch? Yeah, it's a good game. It went down to the wire. That was fun. But do either one of them at 8-4 have a chance to win the national championship? No. I think there is a component there that you should be forming a playoff with an estimation, each season's different, that everyone that's participating has a legitimate chance, not a probability, of course, but a chance to win the national championship. Otherwise, and there has to be a component that these teams earned their way into the playoff. I thought that once we got to the 8 to 12 range and maybe even to 16, that the argument that, okay, we've devalued the regular season, I pushed back on by saying, yes, there will be your Ohio State, Indiana games that we saw play out this year, or in past years, your Georgia, Alabama games, those type games, matchups where teams have already made the playoff. It's somewhat of a meaningless game. But for each one of those, there are a dozen to 15 games of 7-2 LSU taking on 7-2 Texas A&M in game 10, where in a previous life it would have been, okay, that's a nice football game, but doesn't mean anything. These teams aren't making the playoffs. That is suddenly a titanic, huge matchup. That we gained so many more meaningful games that far outweighed the games that became non-meaningful because the two teams were so good and had etched their place in the playoff. But I think if we reach all the way down to 24, then we are going to really get mired in the 9-1s, 8-2s playing that they're both making the playoff. Okay, they'll be a 12 seed instead of a 17 seed. Does that really matter? These games, I don't know what to make of them because both of these teams are making the playoffs and they're really not even that good. They're good, but it's not like, okay, Alabama earned their playoff spot in the 14 playoff at 11-0. They could lose to Auburn and they should be okay. That's one way to earn a playoff bid and play a meaningless game at the end of the year. But we would have scads of meaningless games. I'm thinking, I've not done the legwork to totally vet out a season, but I've got a pretty good handle on this. And I just think that we would have too many of those 8-2 teams playing meaningless games late in the season.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think we shouldn't award teams for absolutely doing nothing through the course of the season. Tennessee's a perfect example of this. They've been nobody, and they would be on the bubble. Now, I don't think they would have gotten in. Michigan is another example of this. They've been literally nobody, and they've gotten blown out basically by every good team they played, and they would easily be a lock for this playoff system. Like, it's just a bad system. Now, I've even seen it. And I'm telling you, the reason I'm talking about it is because it is dumb in my opinion, but it's got some force behind it. Is people are talking about the 1 and 2 seed getting a double bye, and like 3 through 8 would get a single bye, and then the rest would play out in the first round. Like, in order to incentivize regular season game, would that do anything for you, Mark, to alleviate some of those problems?
Well, it certainly gives incentive to have an excellent record, to gain those buys. It does. I come back to this point from time to time. I don't think this is a huge priority, but I do think it should be considered for the popularity of the sport for people that I run into all the time that consider themselves to be college football fans. Are they sitting here at midnight Eastern time on a Monday night or in the middle of May listening to me go through, my latest offensive line rankings from the Big Ten? No, but they consider themselves college football fans. And if they're sitting there watching a game and don't really understand how did these teams get here or who's going where to play whom next, I think it detracts from it somewhat. Again, not a huge priority, but I think there's something to be taken into consideration, knowing that this sport is competing in December and January for viewing time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I think the playoff committee or whoever decided the times for these games intentionally put the group of 5 games in prime time, because that Ohio State-Tennessee game just got absolutely washed by the NFL game that was on that time. So to me, it's not a coincidence at all. They put the 2 premier games as early as humanly possible to absolutely avoid the NFL.
I'm going to have to go back and look at that, Darrell, because you may be right. I thought off the top of my head that the Clemson, Texas, and Penn State SMU afternoon games got murdered, and that the Friday night game and the Saturday night games were in the clear, and they did well. And that's why they put Notre Dame and Ohio State on Friday and Saturday night.
Now, I could be wrong, but I thought the
okay, you might be right.
Nighttime.
It's my recollection. It's my recollection that the Steelers-Ravens game, that was the second NFL game on that Saturday. It was partly going up against the second half of Clemson, Texas, and partly it bled into the start of Tennessee, Ohio State. Like that I don't think Steelers-Ravens was a night game. I think it was a mid to late afternoon game. But this year, that's different. Packers-Bears is a night game, which will squarely go up against James Madison, Oregon. So people can correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that Steelers-Ravens was a mid to late afternoon game, not a prime time game last year.
I'll also make a point of consideration considering these matchups that are pretty horrific, of course, with James Madison and Tulane involved. That let's say you got a huge NFL fan, but they like college football. They watch college football out of convenience on Saturday or just to scout the players for the pros. They might, because of the relevance of the game, take off knowing that they're going to watch the NFL all day Sunday and Monday night, veer toward an Oregon in another year, Oregon Clemson game or a Tennessee Penn State game versus watching his third NFL game of the day, if that was a better matchup. But Oregon, James Madison is going to bring in obviously nothing but hardcore college football fans, and probably a lot of people that consider themselves hardcore college football fans will pass.
Right, absolutely. And that was going to be, I wanted to get into the TV ratings as well, is this game, the James Madison Oregon game's probably going to do less than your average massive Big Ten SEC matchup.
Oh, yes. Absolutely, it will.
I thought one of the reasons we wanted to expand the playoff was for viewership and get more eyeballs on the product and get it more exposure. And I guess my question is, why is college football not having these games on a Monday or doing something to purposely avoid the NFL? Because it's pretty obvious the NFL is taking up all of the space for college football.
Well, this brings up a point. Someone on Twitter over the weekend mentioned, hey, why isn't the NFL jumping into Army-Navy Saturday? And there's a law against it. The Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961, it prohibits the NFL from having games on Saturdays until the week after Army-Navy. But it brings up the point that law is kind of outdated. We should have a situation where the NFL, there should be regulation here. The NFL should not just plan itself right into the middle of the college football playoff. Now, I know that Congress isn't doing anything to begin with, and that if it does do something, there are far more important things than the NFL and college football. But this is petty on the NFL's part. College football is trying to expand and grow its sport, and the NFL is just thunk. Two big games on Saturdays in the middle of December. The NFL could just wait. The NFL could just wait until the Saturday after Christmas, when there aren't playoff games, have a couple of showcases during, the 7 or 8 mid-tier bowl games, like the Military Bowl. Wouldn't be nearly as intrusive. But no, the NFL is going to insist on, stomping on college football's parade. There should be some regulation here, but unfortunately we don't have that. But that's just part of the context. The Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961 enables the NFL to do this. They could kind of redraw the boundaries for that, but no one has seen fit to do that.
So, Matt, I would say that I agree with you 97.8% of the time, but I'm not quite there with you on this one because, first of all, isn't it college football that has expanded its structure and is, moving in on some NFL territory where at one point, as we've discussst many times, college football would shut down before there were even conference championship games, would shut down and there'd be an Army-Navy week. And then the NFL would jump in with its 2 Saturday games that I just loved those. I loved college football and didn't want it to be over, but in preparation for the bowl season, just loved those NFL matchups on Saturday afternoon with playoff spots on the line. Or it usually would be one game would have playoff spots on the line and the other would be 3-11 Detroit taking on 4-9 Green Bay, but it still was an NFL game on a Saturday. And so it could be argued that college football has kind of moved on NFL territory in terms of mid to late December Saturday dates. And also, if you believe in the free market system, then if college football's a viable option and an entertainment that is worthy of its time, then people are going to choose it over the NFL. And also maybe college football should redetermine that its playoff system should involve the 12 best football teams in America to be a better entertainment product than throwing out, 49-10 games like Oregon and James Madison.
Let me respond. So technically, you're absolutely correct that college football has invaded the NFL's turf. There are two things. One is that the NFL can play on the Saturday after Christmas. So like the NFL would give up one Saturday. It's not giving up every late December Saturday. It just has to give up one. And the other thing is that if the Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961 got reformed, the NFL could play a doubleheader after Army-Navy. And so the NFL would still get 2 December Saturdays, but it just wouldn't be the playoff Saturday. The NFL could play on after Army-Navy, then the playoff first round, college football gets that weekend, and then the NFL gets the Saturday after Christmas. So like if the NFL and college football, had adults running the ship, everyone could be satisfied. Everyone could get what they want. But no, both sides are being petty.
Well, the NFL is getting absolutely what they want, which is everything. The NFL wants to stomp on. They're like Godzilla in Tokyo. They just want everything to be destroyed. They want everything to be wiped away and obliterated. So they're getting exactly what they want, and they do have their NFL adults is seek and destroy, and they're absolutely destroying college football. So I would argue they are getting what they want. But my second point is I didn't know about this law, and it is an interesting point. But if you're college football and you're a TV executive, I would think you need to adapt to the realities of the situation and say, hey, these other playoff games, we're going to throw a Thursday game on or have it a 2 Friday games or something like that. Because what's happening is it's going to be embarrassing and humiliating when this James Madison Oregon game is going to get like 2.5 to 3 million people watching it. And it's going to do worse than your average Ohio State or Michigan game does. Like, that's not a good look for the sport overall.
That's way lower than an Ohio State or Michigan game against anybody, really, even against the worst teams in the Big Ten. Shoot, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, absolutely, I'm right there with you. Yeah. Well, this conversation reminds me of the conversations Matt and I used to have. What, about 3 years ago when we were trying to save the Pac-12?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Late Sunday afternoon game, college football game. And it's interesting, Mark, just on that point, that the NFL this past Sunday had a really, really strong late window. You had Lions, Rams, you had Packers, Broncos, you had Colts, Seahawks, like 3 high-end games that were close and dramatic. But that's not usually the case. Usually you have Cardinals, Raiders, you have, Browns, Chargers. Usually these late NFL windows are duds. So, if the NFL has a thin 4:25 Eastern window, college football should be getting one prominent TV game into that slot. I think that's a greatly underutilized thing. So the college football playoff playing one game at, let's say, 5 or 5:30 Eastern on a Sunday, I think would make a whole lot of sense instead of having 3 games on Saturday where the NFL is going to throw at least one marquee matchup. This year it's Packers-Bears. I think a Sunday late afternoon, early evening playoff game, that would make a whole lot of sense for college football. And the other thing to point out is college football has not yet claimed the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving. I know that's not a playoff specific point, but that is a TV window which could do really, really well, and no one in college football has yet pounced on that. So there are some unexplored opportunities for college football, including with the playoff going to Sunday for one game, not multiple, but one.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's just hard to work with the NFL because college football is always going to be at an innate disadvantage because they have the worst players the lesser brands. It's not going to, and the NFL isn't just a sport, it's a cultural movement. Like it impacts people's lives in a way that just no other sport does. So I don't see how college football can ever like have a partnership or an agreement with the NFL because the NFL is so big that it doesn't need to work with literally anybody to do anything.
You're right, and that has been proven by NFL regular season games. Or at least the most recent proof. It's been proven for years, but going up against regular season games against the college football playoffs and basically doubling up plus from what I remember of the TV ratings.
Yeah, the Chiefs Cowboys Thanksgiving game got 57 million viewers, the most in the history of the Thanksgiving game. Like, just think about every big college football game you can combine, like Michigan, Ohio State, Georgia, Bama, the Big Ten championship game, and you're not even close to reaching that one NFL game.
Yeah, think about that. So, yeah, Ohio State, Michigan this year did 19 million versus 57. So 3 Ohio State, Michigan games, the biggest game in the sport, or Big Ten championship game, got about the same number versus Chiefs, Cowboys. What are the Chiefs, like 6-6? And the Cowboys are, I know
6-8 versus 6-7-1.
But there's something in that range. And yeah, did I watch that game? No. Did I didn't even know they were playing, but would I have been watching that game the majority of my life? Absolutely, every play. But I'm just in a place right now. I have no idea who's. I caught a little football on Thanksgiving, but my memory does not go back even that far to recall what I was watching.
Right. So, anyway, that's all I got for you all this week. It's a pleasure talking to you both. Pleasure always, Matt, having you on here. I mean, you just always bring that extra level to the show, and I greatly appreciate that as a viewer. So
you're very kind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for everything you do, Matt.
Sure. Thank you.
Absolutely. We will second what DeReal just stated. Matt does a phenomenal job at a number of locations. Of course, Trojans Wire and on the USC show. Anything in particular to highlight at Trojans Wire and on the USC channel here at the Voice of College Football?
Well, this year at the USC channel, when we've had Ethan, replacing Tim Prangley from previous years, and Tim and I had a good thing going, but things didn't work out. But Ethan's been really good, and at Trojans Wire, like Ethan writes a very interesting think piece. Like one think piece every weekday. So I've been really impressed. Just obviously he's a colleague at the USC channel, but just evaluating his work, like he is a deep thinker about these things. He always brings something really interesting to the table. So really just want to say that what Ethan Inman contributes to our USC show and to Trojans Wire, like he's a deep thinker, and you all need to be reading him at Trojans Wire.
All right, our buddy Ralph here, and we always appreciate our Michigan fan Ralph, but I think this is just a bit hopeful or a bit, I don't want to call it delusional, but if Ohio State, Michigan played on Thanksgiving Day, which of course is only 2 days before the time that they actually do play, that they might get 50 million viewers. I would love to believe that. There is no way I can believe that. So if you go to the TV ratings for the noon Eastern time slot when Ohio State and Michigan play, they obviously crush everyone else. So you would be piecing and parceling together 1.2 million here and 1.8 million there and so forth. So it's not like Ohio State and Michigan are being compromised that much. They are. Like if that was the only college football game being played at noon on Saturday, yeah, they would have more viewers, because the Pitt Miami viewers, many of them just want to see Pitt play or just want to see Miami play, and they don't watch any other college football. But yes, sure, there would be some of them that would watch Ohio State and Michigan, but I find it hard to believe that we could stretch that 19 million figure, which is high for an Ohio State Michigan game. So that was an extremely high number this year. It's been lower than that. It was like 13 or 14 last year would stretch all the way to 50 million. All right, Matt. Well, we did it. And I appreciate you being here on Mondays. And you were certainly welcome throughout the week as well. But we have our 4 playoff games. I will ask you this question before as we head out. If you could only watch one game, which one would it be this weekend?
See, this is what gets me. Like, there's only one game I'm really interested in because Alabama, Oklahoma, and Tulane, Ole Miss are rematches, and then you have James Madison versus Oregon. Like, if you put 100 college football fans in a room, would fewer than 90 pick A&M Miami? Like, to me, that I'd have to think about your college football fandom credentials if you don't think A&M Miami is the best first round game of the 4. Like, I don't think it's even close.
Well, I think it's the best, and it would be the choice that I would make. I think it's the most intriguing matchup because of what you just stated. But I do give some consideration to Alabama and Oklahoma because there's a difference between best matchup and what's going to turn out to be the best game.
Yeah.
Now, certainly we would all be shocked if the best game did not turn out to be one of those 2 games because of the obvious inferior product elsewhere. So, all right, Matt, we always appreciate your time and expertise. Everyone, we will make it on back here. Iowa Live at 5 p.m. Eastern time on the Iowa channel. Then you got me at 6 Eastern and at 10 Eastern on Tuesday. Check out Matt's work at Trojans Wire, and we will see you soon.